This is not live readings. This is an unasked for video response to a video I just got done watching by Mindful Tarot, which I had seen before, called What is Calibration? And using the tarot to help. And I already did lay out my cards that I wanted to talk about. I just kind of did it for myself and then, oops. I just kind of had done it for myself and then decided I wanted to do it as a video. Now, my battery's low, so apparently I'm going to have to make this a fairly short video. So, everyone go check out What is Calibration on Mindful Tarot's channel, and she's got a lot of other great videos too, where she kind of goes into more of an explanation, but basically, you're using a tarot deck that you're more familiar with to help you better understand a tarot deck that you're less familiar with. And so the way she does it, she had used one deck, and she uses her Rider-Waite-Smith as her calibration deck because that's her personal tried and true. And I decided to do it with two decks. And I've always loved reading with multiple decks because I just feel like they communicate better to me that way. So I love this idea of the calibration. So she also explained the difference between reading a multi-card reading or multi-deck reading versus a calibration. So a calibration reading is not about a regular reading where you would ask, tell me about my life, what do I need to know, tell me about my love life, tell me about my career, any of those types of questions. You are focused on the cards rather than a question outside of the cards. So this is the Tarot of the Divine deck and guidebook, which I have hardly worked with, and when I first got it, I felt like I needed to learn all of the mythology of each card, and I was going to have to be really in depth in order to be able to use it. And I was a little bit more of a beginner. Now that I feel really comfortable with the tarot, I find that the pictures are very sufficient without going deeper, which doesn't mean that I wouldn't go deeper. It's just that I don't need to study every single card before I can use the deck. And the calibration deck that I'm using is Hanson Roberts, and I cannot think of what this one is called. I'll put it in the description when I think of it. True Heart, Rachel True's True Heart Tarot. There we go. All right, so the card that we're looking at here, we have the Ten of Swords. And so, we see they're kind of sinking, right? Rather than just being stabbed, here we have this sense that whatever was stabbed is kind of sinking into the water, into the abyss. That would be great to know more about the story, but just based on the card, that's what we see. And I didn't really notice this before, but there is sort of this person outside of the scene, which is kind of interesting. Yes, I love this, super love this concept. Definitely check out Mindful Tarot's video on the topic, because that is where I learned about it. So then I calibrated with the King of Pentacles. And honestly, even though this is one of the decks I've had the longest, and should be more familiar with, this left me a little, scratching my head a little. But kind of what I see here is sort of sinking under the weight of all the responsibility of being the King of Pentacles. I always see this card as being very weighed down, even by all of his richness and wealth and prosperity. I feel like in terms of kingship, the king and the kingdom. So the more sort of carefree and light for me that the king is, the more that it's about his own sort of pleasure and ease of life, the more perhaps difficult it would be for the kingdom, versus where you have a king who takes his responsibility very, very seriously and he wants his kingdom to prosper. It's going to be heavier of a weight for him to carry. So we kind of have this idea of sort of sinking under the weight of the, ooh, it looks like it's getting dark, of the responsibility. And then when I flip this one is really interesting. All right, this one really kind of blew my mind. We have the Hanged Man. So the Hanged Man is about inaction. So right away, I thought about when you're sinking and you're struggling, and especially like with quicksand, which is sort of Hollywood made up type of thing, I believe, but the concept of it is kind of the more you struggle, the faster you sink. And I thought about Harry Potter when they had fallen into the vines that gripped on them. And she said, don't struggle, it'll only kill you faster. And then Ron's like, kill us faster. Like, dying is not the option, it's just whether it's slower or faster. But so the Hangman just gave this whole other kind of concept to the 10. Well, normally when you see the 10 of swords, the person is gone. They're dead. They're poked through the hole. They're, poked full with swords. But here we see someone that's literally sinking. And so, like, I feel like we have someone who's sinking under the weight of all their heavy responsibilities, but then also this kind of message of not struggling, and maybe even a message of sort of a death of the ego, sort of letting yourself sink and then kind of sort of letting the ego die in order to experience the enlightenment, and the feeling of oneness, of connection. So the idea of ego is not about like, I think I'm so great. It's the idea of I, the individual, the person is an individual. Your personality is your ego. So we kind of have this concept of maybe the ego drowning, and sort of letting go of all of the sort of worldly possessions and the things that we cling to that make us who we think we are, and sort of an acceptance of sort of what we are beyond the individual I. That's kind of a big, super philosophical, spiritual concept, but and this does like really gives me a whole different outlook on the 10 of Swords, more than just being the end, which often I think the 10 of Swords, a friend of mine used to say, she had heard it on maybe Judge Judy or something, like, it's over, put a period on it and move on. Like, stop sort of living in that past. Put a period on it and move on. It's done. And so I think of that as a 10 of Swords a lot of times. But this just gives a whole sort of deeper perspective that really, I don't know, manages to shine sort of this different light and really help me understand this 10 of Swords in a deeper, more nuanced, interesting way. And I just really, honestly, I love this concept because I love using other cards to help understand the card, to understand cards. I love that concept very much. And I feel like, I could sit here for an hour and journal or think or talk and like even bring more sort of enlightenment onto it. But that's sort of the gist of that. I also wanted to say that I also feel like you could do this with helping to understand, to sort of calibrate an oracle deck. So here's the Sacred Forest Oracle, and it's all in order. So I'm going with the Toadstools and Growth, okay? And I'm going to cheat on this a little bit because I'm not going to really shuffle. I'm just going to like select a card. I guess that's valid, right? Okay, so we have Toadstools and Growth, and then we have the Six of Rods. Wow, that's very interesting to me. And then we can go with this new deck. She also talks about some other ways of calibrating in her video that are really, well, at least one other way of calibrating two decks that are unfamiliar with each other. That's also really interesting. So definitely be sure to check out the original video. Knight of Swords. So we have the Toadstool, Growth, and we have the Six of Rods, and we have the Knight of Swords. And just because I'm going to even take one more. Now all of these cards are just to shed a light upon this Toadstool and Growth. Wow, okay. Wow, Seven of Wands. So maybe I did too many, honestly. It's possible. Sometimes I go overboard. So here, we have this sort of victory concept. And with growth, I feel like the way that you grow when you sort of have an accomplishment, that helps you kind of stretch out of your comfort zone, right? And then the Knight of Swords is also, moving very quickly forward with his sword into a new territory. And so I'm feeling like this is giving me a concept of this growth card that deals with moving out of your comfort zone. And even here, we have the Seven of Wands, which is sort of defense. So here we've moved into a dangerous territory, and the growth that we've experienced, will bring us further successes. But really, I feel now that for me, this growth card is really talking about, in order to grow, we need to take on new challenges and step out of the comfort zone and step into areas where we feel vulnerable. We can still protect ourselves, but we've got to kind of go out there where the fire is and get right in the line of fire in order to experience that growth. So that was pretty cool, because the first set of cards I had already had kind of an idea of what I was going to say. The second set of cards I didn't. So I really like the way that really worked together to help me get a little bit more about this card of growth. And of course, toadstools. And if you think about, mushrooms are just simply amazing. And the more you study about mushrooms, the more you learn that they basically make life on this planet possible, and growth as well. So yeah, again, I could probably go deeper, but I do feel like that is quite a bit. For me, I always feel like it's never deep enough. Like, go deeper, and it's just like, it's already pretty deep. Like, just kind of let it sink in. I have to remind myself sometimes. But yeah, it does. It brings some really nice new layers in. And you can look at some other things too, like, these horses kind of, facing in the same direction, going outward. That we have swords, we have rods, and wands, which are the same. So, you can bring in the concept of this fire energy and the sun and kind of like danger, boldness. Boldness rewards. Yeah. So I think it's really exciting. So that's pretty much all, because my battery's probably going to die in about 3 seconds anyway. So go out there and calibrate some of your decks. Try it a couple times and just get the feeling of how it helps to add layers to your cards, to your readings, to your understanding of the cards, and see like what works best for you. Does it work best for you to use maybe your very first deck that you're most comfortable with? Or does it work better for you to use maybe 2 decks? I found 2 decks worked really well when I was doing the tarot. For me, I liked using 2. I liked having, And then the reason I used 3 when I did the oracle was because I had 3 on hand. So I could use 4 maybe if I wanted to. Obviously the more cards, the more in depth you can kind of go with it. So there you go. I hope you find this useful technique. And of course, be sure to check out the original video from Mindful Tarot. And until next time, tarot friends, be well.